Wonder Man is probably the Marvel series that nobody was expecting anything from. Announced in June 2022, delayed, almost erased from official communications, it dragged along, despite itself, the image of an almost embarrassing project. And yet, behind this silence, Marvel Studios tried something radical. A series without a big final battle, without villains to take down, without promises of an immediate crossover. A series that asks a simple question at a time when so-called superhero fatigue is setting in. What if a superhero refused to be one? Before we start, obviously, spoiler alert. We're going to talk about the story, the characters, some key elements, Easter eggs. You've been warned. Wonder Man is the story of a man who refuses to be a superhero. And in the MCU, that's revolutionary. Wonder Man tells the story of a character who has immense powers, but who only dreams of one thing: living a normal life and becoming an actor, fulfilling his dream. And what if I told you that this series, the one that sat on a shelf for years, might just be one of the best things Marvel Studios has produced for television since Loki Season 2. It might also be quietly shaping a much bigger MCU future. Something much greater for the future of the MCU. Hi everyone, and welcome to House of Marvel for a new video. Today we're going to break down Wonder Man, his story, his stakes, his characters, his place in the comics, and in the MCU. I'm going to give you my personal opinion on the series, including direct insights from my interview with Andrew Guest, the creator of the show. And we'll also talk about Easter eggs and a final theory that could completely change how we see the character. Get your coffee ready, make yourself comfortable. I'm Julian, and you're watching House of Marvel. But what is the Wonder Man series really about? Wonder Man, at its core, isn't about superpowers. It's about choice, about being different, and about what it costs to try to live a normal life when the world expects something else from you. Simon Williams, he's a man with powers, yes. But above all, he's a man obsessed with his craft. Acting isn't just a job for him, it's a calling, a vital necessity. He wants to play every possible role, except for one, the one the world wants to force on him, that of a superhero. Right from the very first episodes, the series sets up a very clear conflict. Simon has to play a role to survive, literally. He has to hide who he is. Why? In episode 4, we learn that the Hollywood industry put a law in place after an accident caused by Damar Davis, aka Dorman, who accidentally made another actor disappear through him during a scene. Since that accident, Simon Williams has had to fit into boxes to conform to a system that leaves him no room to be himself. And that ties in with my theory, which we'll talk about later. And that's where Wonder Man immediately sets itself apart from the other MCU series we've seen. There's no big battle. Moving into the climactic third act, viewers will notice there is no sudden reveal of a major final villain, nor is there any looming cosmic threat that needs to be diffused at the last minute. Andrew Guest, who served as the dedicated showrunner for this project, explained this creative choice to me very clearly during a recent interview.
A ton. There was a ton of freedom to experiment when it came to the storytelling in the show. This was something from the beginning, before I even got involved, where everyone who was already attached, Destin Daniel Cretton and Brian Gay, were interested in making a show that didn't have a third act villain reveal, that didn't have a big battle. How do we tell a story that's still a part of the MCU and still feels like it shares DNA with the sort of spirit of this world that Kevin and Lou and everyone has created, but doesn't follow some of the same rules and some of the same plot structures that we've seen before?
Simon Williams, for his part, developed his powers at a very young age. He was different early on, didn't really have friends, isolated himself, shut himself away, and his relationship with his father meant a lot to him because his father was the one who passed on the passion for being on stage or in front of a camera. At 13, he set his kitchen on fire. A defining event, a trauma, a detail the series repeats over and over again. Simon becomes a solitary, closed-off man. Obsessed with his craft, acting comes before everything else. Even before his girlfriend and his own survival, he suffers from rejection by his community, those around him, and especially by his brother, who embodies exactly what Simon is not. That is, a stable life, a job he considers serious, a well-laid path. Through him, the series lays out a harsh truth. Hollywood is a jungle, and to survive there, you absolutely must not be yourself. The moment I understood what kind of hero Simon Williams would be, or rather refused to be, was when he endured his powers instead of using them. In reality, Marvel Studios gives us a brilliant twist. The real power of Simon Williams, it's not strength, it's not ionic energy, but his ability to move people, to convey a visceral emotion, to light up the screen. As for Trevor Slattery, he's no longer just comic relief, and that's a good thing. To be honest, I was really sad to see what they did with him. Daniel Cretton in Shang-Chi because, as a reminder, Sir Ben Kingsley is a phenomenal actor who won an Oscar for Gandhi in 1982, among other things. Very quickly, we understand something essential. For him too, being an actor isn't just a job, it's a calling. Ben Kingsley delivers a performance here with a level of nuance that's extremely rare in the MCU. He's funny, but above all, he's deeply moving. Just as a quick reminder, Trevor actually escaped from prison, and here, he is currently working for the DODC to avoid going back to jail. So he approaches Simon Williams to keep an eye on him. But their shared love for acting quickly takes over. And what was supposed to be a mission turns into a deep, almost inseparable friendship. Trevor becomes a mentor and a partner in an incredible adventure that will take them to the set of Wonder Man. And for everyone who is disappointed by the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 or Shang-Chi, thank you. They're definitely going to change their minds. Andrew Guest and Destin Daniel Cretton finally give Trevor the depth he deserved. A complete 180-degree turn that lets us explore his past, his addictions, his regrets, his guilt. Because Trevor always wants to help, but here his help comes at a price, and of course with consequences. But then, is the Wonder Man from the comics different from the one in the MCU? Yes, completely different. In the comics, Wonder Man's an extremely unique character. His story is long, complex, sometimes totally incoherent, even contradictory. To keep it short, because it doesn't really matter, for the series, Simon Williams is a failed industrialist, the son of an industrialist, and a rival of Tony Stark. He is resurrected, transformed, manipulated, and then becomes an Avenger, Vision's friend, and a hero despite himself. Andrew Guest himself said in an interview that Simon Williams' origin in the comics is totally convoluted. So the MCU made a radical choice. They trimmed it down, simplified it, focused on the human side rather than the lore, and placed this character in a story that unfolds in the spotlight.
Well, one of the things that was really interesting was from the beginning, everyone at Marvel wanted the show to feel different in terms of tone. And they were really open to sort of any sort of creative lens I wanted to bring to this project, which was really lovely. But they also were not tied to any sort of iteration of Simon Williams from the comics. He's had a sort of a long, complicated relationship in the Marvel world and gone through many iterations, and his backstory is, sort of convoluted. So they really just wanted to tell stories about Hollywood. And my job was at first to figure out who Simon is.
And paradoxically, that's what makes the character more true in spirit than many literal adaptations. One thing's for sure, and before I give you my opinion on the series, Wonder Man really has fun with its nods to real life and the MCU. I counted no fewer than 24 well-known actors either seen or mentioned in the series. But as I was saying, there are also really a lot of MCU Easter eggs, and it starts right with Simon's family. We see Sanford Williams, his father from the comics. As I mentioned, he's a very important arms industry tycoon, and even though the series doesn't place him exactly the same way in the MCU, just mentioning his name is already an interesting marker. Next, there's the running gag, which is almost becoming a tradition, Rogers the Musical. The series confirms that the show actually gets a theatrical release, just like a real hit musical. And the parallel here with Hamilton is fully embraced. Of course, Trevor Slattery steals part of the show. Reference-wise, he jokes that he has nothing to do with Pizzagate or the Illuminati, a meta joke that plays on conspiracy theories and the word Illuminati. Not to be confused with the teen scene in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Pizzagate is a reference to American conspiracy theories. I'll let you look that up yourself. And while we're on the subject of Trevor, there are plenty of direct callbacks to Iron Man 3 and the one-shot All Hail the King, especially his mother, whom he mentions again as a source of inspiration, and even the famous Mandarin glasses that he kept at home. At one point, the series also gives a very direct nod with a new video message from the Mandarin that opens with the 10 Rings logo, the one we've known since Iron Man. On the movie side of things in the MCU, you can spot a poster for the Zaniac, that famous in-universe film. Remember, it's connected to Brad Wolfe, whom we saw in Loki Season 2. And also, here we see a poster for Planet of the Apes, tying in with what Trevor talks about in Shang-Chi, the movie that inspired him to become an actor. Even when it's just a set detail, it adds depth to the character. On the government agency side, the series strongly reconnects with the recent MCU through the DODC, the Department of Damage Control, which, remember, was created by Tony Stark. Trevor works for the DODC. And we even see Agent Cleary again, who already appeared in No Way Home and Ms. Marvel. And of course, we go back to their prison. Supermax, the one we've already seen in Ms. Marvel and She-Hulk. It grounds Wonder Man in the same world without forcing it. There's also a nice nod to the MCU's geography. At one point, Simon hangs around near the Chinese theater, and this place isn't just iconic in Hollywood. Boulevard, it was already connected to the attacks in Iron Man 3, the ones claimed by Trevor's Mandarin at the time. It really ties everything together nicely. And finally, the series throws in two little references that really sum up its tone. On one hand, Sam Wilson is mentioned as the full package as Captain America, while Simon Williams, for his part, reduces him to just a regular guy, which fits perfectly with the show's theme about perception and the roles we assign to people. And on the other hand, we've got Roxxon again, behind a black substance that triggers Tamar Davis's powers. We already talked about Roxxon, remember, back in season 1 of Loki. Anyway, Wonder Man doesn't just drop Easter eggs to check boxes, it adds to the vibe, the Hollywood setting, and especially Trevor, who literally becomes a living bridge between Iron Man 3, Shang-Chi, and today's MCU. But did you notice Captain America's shield right here? Now let's talk about what I personally thought. About the series, I'll be very honest, the signs around Wonder Man weren't very good. A series announced in June 2022, delayed, set aside, almost invisible in Marvel's communications until New York Comic Con. It felt like we were seeing the last series from the Bob Chapek era, a series that was sacrificed. I was going into it reluctantly, but you know me, and I think it's really important. I never judge a project before I've seen it. And I got access to the series almost 3 months before its release. And then, total surprise. In my opinion, Wonder Man is the best Marvel Studios series to date since Loki Season 2. That's not just hype, it's simply my critical assessment. Yahya Abdul-Mateen and Ben Kingsley deliver outstanding performances, unlike anything we've seen before in the MCU. Nuanced, magnetic, you get attached to them and want to follow their journey. And for me, the series is entirely about the idea of superheroism, because it's not about superheroes, it's about creation, vocation, and artistic survival. Here, superheroism is just a pretext to talk about people, their flaws, and their dreams. And that is both creative and bold. And it's also deeply human, exactly what we were hoping for from Marvel Studios. Now, let's move on to the theory, because for me, the most fascinating element is the arrival of Simon Williams' powers. If we stick to what the series shows, Wonder Man could be one of the most powerful characters in the MCU. And then there's this detail. Always that fire, that blaze in the kitchen when he was 13. We assume it was caused by his uncontrolled powers at that moment. But what if that wasn't the case? And what if the fire was just an accident and Simon survived because something inside him was triggered? You see where I'm going with this? In the comics, Wonder Man isn't officially a mutant, but in some universes, especially House of M, the mutant community considers him one of their own. His origin is completely different in the MCU. And we know that the next big saga will be about the mutants. So I think anything is possible. And the end of the series is interesting in that sense. He frees Trevor. From the DODC prison, we know the DODC is going to play a big role in Spider-Man Brain New Day and will most likely be important in Phase 7. They might start hunting mutants. So we could have a Simon Williams on the run from the DODC against a backdrop of a crackdown on supernatural beings. In reality, Wonder Man might not be here to introduce a hero, but to test a new kind of Marvel storytelling. Andrew Guest told me very clearly in an interview that he hopes Simon Williams will really have a future in the MCU.
I hope in many ways that Simon Williams has a future in the MCU. I hope his character lives on, but I also hope that this sort of experiment for Marvel pays off and that they're encouraged to continue to push the boundaries in terms of the kind of storytelling that they can do.
Abdul-Mateen is such a scene stealer that it would be a huge mistake not to take advantage of that. Now it's your turn to give me your opinion. Is Wonder Man just an isolated anomaly? Or is it the future of Marvel Studios series? Should Simon Williams stay on the sidelines of the MCU or become a central piece of the next saga? And above all, should Marvel Studios keep going in this direction or go back to more formulaic series? Let me know in the comments and feel free to send me your thoughts. I love reading your theories and debating them with you. And as always, thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Also, to make sure you don't miss my next videos, subscribe and turn on notifications. See you next time on House of Marvel.